sometimes a sibling relationship can just be like collateral damage, like a kind of,
Mm.
I just need to be away from this whole structure.
Welcome to the Bad Mothers Podcast. I'm Monica Cardenas. This week, my book club partner in crime and family estrangement Substack author, Tam Stevens, and I are discussing the novel Mother in the Dark by Kayla Maiuri. We read it for the Estrangement book club last month, and since it includes parental and sibling estrangement, I thought it would fit nicely with this season. The novel was published in 2022 and is narrated by a young 20-something living in New York City who's been out of contact with her parents and younger sisters for several years. When she gets a call because something has happened back home, she recalls a troubled childhood and struggles with whether to return the call or stay away. Just beware, there are some minor spoilers. Here's Tam and I discussing the many complicated factors at play in this literary novel. All right, thanks for being here, Tam, on the Bad Mothers podcast to talk about Mother in the Dark by Kayla Maiuri, which we discussed in our Estrangement book club a few weeks ago.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Monica.
Yes, thanks for coming back, I should say, because it's your second time on the podcast. So I thought this book would be a great one to use or to discuss on the podcast because there's there's all kinds of family estrangement in this book. The main character is estranged from basically her entire family for 3 years. And it was a great topic or a great book to discuss in our Estrangement book club. But since this season on the podcast, I'm focusing on sibling estrangement, it's a good fit as well because our character is the oldest of 3 girls. So she has 2 younger sisters that she's also not in contact with through most of the novel. But we should say that there are flashbacks to her childhood when obviously she's, living with her sisters and quite close to them, which we will discuss. Do you want to give us a summary of the novel or your own, like a synopsis in your own words, Tam?
Yeah, I thought it was a really good book actually for kind of exploring estrangement because I think it can be quite hard to explore it sometimes in fiction. It's definitely one of those books that makes you think, is this fiction or is this based on something slightly real?
Mm,
But yeah, I thought it actually really got into the complexity of family and the way that there's not always an entirely sort of binary families aren't binary. There isn't generally one person who's, well, in some families there is one person who's
mm.
clearly causing the trouble, but in most families it's quite complex. And it's a good novel as well for kind of capturing how siblings react to their parents in different ways and cope with sort of dysfunction in a family in different ways, and how that kind of goes the whole way through into adulthood.
Yeah. Yeah. Just sort of plot wise, I'll say, we follow Anna, who is the eldest daughter of this family. She's in her, I think, early 20s living in New York. She's originally from Boston. All her family is still in Boston. And she's basically, when the novel opens, she's dodging phone calls from her sister and her dad. And we don't really know why. And then we have these flashbacks to her childhood, which started out pretty idyllic sounding. And then the family moves to a new home and a new part of town, and things slowly fall apart because the mother has some mental health issues that we don't know a whole lot about. And the father is an alcoholic, and the everything just really slowly falls apart in the family. Everything sort of breaks down. And by the time Anna is old enough to go off on her own, she does, and she doesn't come back. Because I think of all of the responsibility she felt she carried for her younger siblings and her mother. And so then we have a question of whether she will return, what the state of her family is, why they're calling her, and whether there's any hope of reconciling.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good synopsis of it, definitely. And I think it kind of captures also, it does go a little bit into the mother's childhood and how that might have caused this unraveling of the mother when
Yeah.
um I think it's also quite a good novel for kind of capturing also the sort of powerlessness that well, many women still have, but certainly in the past, mothers may have had in families where the kind of this big decision to move is very much taken by the father, and the mother doesn't
Hmm.
really get much say in it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It seems like a very old-fashioned dynamic, although I think they're growing up around, the year 2000, early
Yeah.
2000s. So it's not that long ago, but it does feel very old-fashioned in
Yeah.
that family. And yes, you alluded to Anna's mother's mother, who we know through very brief snippets that she lost her mother at a young age. And we don't really know what happens with her until the end of the book. And is part of the problems that resurface later after they move to this new house.
Yeah. 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 I think there's definitely a sort of thread of grief that runs through
Mm.
the book.
Yeah, and I think it does, even though those snippets we get of Anna's mother as a child are extremely brief. I mean, it's probably 4 pages in the whole of the novel. It does give us, like you were saying earlier, it gives us sort of a more rounded picture of estrangement. We get at least a hint of an explanation for
Mm.
her mother's behavior, even though, obviously she fails Anna in lots of ways when she's growing up. We do sort of get an idea of why that is and have some, I at least had some sympathy for her. Not to excuse what Anna went through, but yeah, I can see how, those like generational problems cause breakdowns, for years to come.
Yeah. The book kind of really captures also how the dynamic between a mother and father can sort of shape a family. Like their mother and father are sort of, it felt to me reading it like the mother and father were struggling so much to just cope with their relationship with each other and the decisions they're making and financial things and just staying alive, that
Yeah.
their ability to sort of see their children was not really there. And I think that can often happen in families that, in an ideal family, parents have loads of bandwidth to kind of completely see what they're inflicting on their children. But I think this book kind of captures quite well how, I don't know, it doesn't feel like either parent wants to be a bad parent, and yet they end up being quite bad parents.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
circumstances and the decisions they make and how it all unravels.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. I think that's a really good point. I think they do really love their kids. And that's something you hear so much, I guess, in when we're talking about estrangement is, parents will often say they did the best they could. And I think most children know that, even though it might have been very lacking. And then what we're looking for as adults is just an acknowledgement of that, right?
Mm.
That it wasn't good enough and they're sorry. And hopefully we can move on from there. But I think that's kind of the lingering question for Anna throughout the novel is, I don't know, she doesn't have that kind of reckoning with her parents for most of the novel. So we don't really know how much accountability they might be willing
Mm.
to take.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you mentioned earlier the kind of intergenerational aspect of it. And I guess, hopefully people listening to this might go and read the book or have read the book. But I think it's hard to talk about the book without saying kind of what happened with her mother, but I don't want to spoil it, but
Hmm.
I need to say, because I think what you often see in estrangement, I think, is parents are like, well, I did a lot better than my own parents did. And they generally have. Um,
Hmm.
I think most people try to aim to be better parents, and also in many ways, certainly in America and Britain, things have generally improved for families. So people are able to be better parents than older generations probably were able to be. But in the book, the mother's mother just abandons her. You know, she's just gone, and the mother never sees her mother ever again. And you really get the sense that it's quite confusing having this many mothers, but
Yeah.
the current mother, so not the grandmother, so the grandmother kind of vanished when the mother was very little. And it's quite a moving scene of that happening. But then you can see how this generation of the mother is kind of having this desire to just walk away from her family. Like, she is very unhappy. She is not wanting to live where she's living. She's not really enjoying her marriage. She's not probably enjoying motherhood much. But she stays. And I think there is a bit
Hmm.
where she kind of talks about that, the kind of the staying, that, the parents do stay and they stay together. And I think that's like a very interesting part of estrangement, because you can say, well, to that mother, she will say, well, I did a lot better than my own mother. I didn't just
Hmm.
abandon you. I stayed, I sat it out, I got you to college. I might not have been a very good mother during it. And there are some
Hmm.
pretty bad scenes of things that happen. Um, but from her point of view, she'll say she stayed. But from the point of view of the child, it's kind of like, well, yeah, it's good. You've done much better than what you experienced, but you've still hurt me a lot.
Hmm.
And I think that is kind of often what comes to the heart of why parents will feel so wronged by the estrangement, because they think, well, I've done much better. The child will
Hmm.
be like, well, yeah, but how much of my pain do I have to put aside because you did do better? If you see what I mean?
Right, right, right. Yeah. And I think, it's interesting. You said you thought Anna's mother probably wasn't enjoying motherhood and probably also wanted to leave. But I didn't, I guess because I was hung up on the early scenes, before the family moves. Anna describes her mother and her sisters as like a really close unit, and they seem really happy, like they were best friends. She might have even described them that way, all the girls in the family together. But I guess that's when the girls were young too. And I mean, I talk about this a lot, that I think probably in every family, there's a potential for a conflict to develop as children grow up,
Mm.
especially maybe daughters with their mothers, because we expect moms to give up so much of themselves when their children are really young, right? And so there's this intense bond, hopefully. And then, in my experience, and, all young women, I'm sure, you grow up and you start to have your own interests in your own life and opinions that are maybe different from your mom's. And I think depending on the emotional and mental state of the mother, that could be really triggering and cause a lot of conflict. And I think that's maybe what happened in this book, is like the daughters grew up and they started, well, when there's conflict between the parents, they often side with their father. They're really frustrated with the mother because her, entire personality has changed a lot. And so they, this problem sort of brews between the daughters and the mother. And one of the
Mm.
things we see is some attempts at triangulation, I think. So occasionally the mother will pick on Anna in front of her sisters and wait for the sisters to sort of gang up on Anna as well.
Mm.
So that's, I mean, one thing we see. And as well as I think, I mean, you can tell me it looks like um, some parentification too for Anna because she's often, getting her sisters up for school and making up something for breakfast and, doing those sort of motherly things because her mom isn't doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the book captures really well the impact of a parent having quite severe depression. It feels like, obviously, you can't diagnose from a book, but it feels like the mother has this very severe depression. So it goes, to give it context, it goes from the mother being this really loving, engaged mother when they're in the place that the mother grew up around her sort of friends and support network. And when they move to this kind of, I guess, sort of suburban place that seems to be pretty far from where they were originally. And I think the mother doesn't drive as well.
Mm-hmm.
So she kind of suddenly has this very claustrophobic life. She can't really go places. She develops this very severe depression. Um, and it's very sad because you see how Anna is definitely parentified. She starts having to prepare lunch boxes for her siblings and all of these things. The father doesn't really seem to engage or notice this is happening. And they get into this very claustrophobic, sort of, like you say, triangulated kind of little realm of women. And then
Mm-hmm.
father's out, he's off, he's, I think, having affairs potentially, definitely has at least one.
Mm-hmm.
Off with his friends at the bar, all that kind of stuff. Um, so it's this very insular world of the women all trapped at home together, the little girls, because they're not women, little girls, and the mother. And I think it is interesting what you say about the growing up, because I think it can be very hard for mothers because they go from this place of being really, really worshipped. And for this mother, it's such a drop because she was this
Mm-hmm.
really, what seems to be a very good mother, to this place where her daughters can really, well, certainly Anna can really see all her flaws, how much she's failing at motherhood. And I think the mother tries to sort of maybe regain power through triangulation, because I think triangulation is a lot about power, kind of who's got the power in a family and who's
Mm-hmm.
demoted. And, a parent can gain power by setting siblings against each other. Siblings can gain power by setting each other against each other. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, the book captures very well that kind of toxic element of it. But the other thing I thought was quite interesting about the book as well is it sort of also captures quite well a sort of internalized misogyny that the women, or the females of the family, all have. As in, there's a lot of scenes where Anna kind of talks about how her mother has physically diminished, that I think she talks about her kind of, I don't even really want to say it, but like kind of being fat or not attractive, or how she's not,
Mm-hmm.
hair's greasy, she's not putting on makeup, she's not, I think there's even a bit about kind of like, she's not shaving her legs, all these kinds of things.
Yeah, there's
Um,
one, I have it right here. Let me just read it. I looked at the spot on the living room couch, at the dimple in the cushion where her body pressed into the leather day after day. It would be too easy to shame her back. And that's sort
yeah.
of calling out her. I mean, Anna sees it as laziness. Obviously, she's depressed, and her weight gain, and just, not, as you said, she's not taking care of herself. She's just, I get sort of a frumpiness to her
Mm,
appearance, based on Anna's descriptions.
yeah, I'm pretty sure there is a scene where it's quite harsh what she says about her mother. And I think it's well observed by the writer, because it's kind of this thing of the female stuck at home, and it's kind of like the mother's, I don't know, it captures quite well how I think sometimes um, mothers can kind of be put on a pedestal. And it's this kind of idea of, well, not everyone, but the kind of traditional idea that, you want your mother to be pretty and show up to the school gates, like, as one of the, I don't know,
Mm,
a quintessential mother in a flowery dress who's got long hair and is like
mm,
the perfect mother.
yeah.
And how, if a mother slips from that, they can be quite policed by their own children for like not meeting that mother
Mm-hmm.
standard that the children want. But at the same time, the mother does fundamentally let her children down. Like she really is a neglectful mother. Like by any
Mm-hmm.
measurement of what neglect is, you would say she was a neglectful mother. Um, but there are some scenes where Anna is quite cruel to the mother as well, where there's this sense that the mother is a figure of an object of pity.
And I think what you were saying about the internalized misogyny is the other part of that is how the girls do really side with their father in lots of ways. So even though he is letting them down just as much as their mother is, so he goes off to work. He's the one who got the job that got them this new, bigger home. And he's sort of consumed with that work. But as you said, he's also out drinking and he is having an affair at one point. So he's definitely not perfect. He has lots of flaws. When he's with the girls, he does seem attentive and happy, which is a big difference compared to their mother. So I think that's probably what Anna and her sisters are comparing. But certainly there's a few scenes where he comes home drunk, like falling over, or there's one time when he is still asleep in his truck in the driveway because he couldn't even get in the door. And the girls are always saying to their mother, "Go help him. Why aren't you helping him? Why are you doing this to him?" Those sorts of things. And the mother even says, "Why should I help him?"
Mm.
But they see it as her responsibility to also look after their father.
Mm. Yeah, I think those bits are they're interesting. I mean, I think when we had our book club session, I did sort of think about it more, and I think it is like a mutual failure by both parents, as in the mother obviously should have recognized that the father was a full-blown alcoholic, really, and that
Hmm.
that wasn't suitable for children to be around or see or witness. But having said that, the mother has what would seem to be severe depression, and the father kind of knows that, and he does nothing. And I think there is a scene where the father kind of really knows that the daughters are being quite neglected, and he doesn't really do anything.
Hmm.
Um, and I guess it's hard to say because they're both unwell in different ways who had the capacity to fix things. Um, but I think that that can be an element within estrangement as well, because you do often see, people will say, well, my mother did all these things, or my sibling did all these things, or my father did all these things. But there's all these other people in the room who don't kind of adjust or sort
Hmm.
of step into that and say, well, yeah, I think you're way too critical of our daughter. Like, I don't like the way that you
Hmm.
talk to them. Or, if there's a sibling that's always bullying the other, their brother or sister, the parents don't actually meaningfully do anything to work out why that's happening.
Hmm.
So it, there is often this sort of the person who's actively doing it, but there are the people who enable or look away whilst the dysfunction
Yeah.
is happening. But I do think in this book it's interesting because it's hard to definitively say who is looking away, because the father is quite unwell with alcoholism as well. So
Hmm.
it feels like the only grown up in the room is Anna. So you can see
Yeah.
she takes on such a burden of of this, and then even in terms of the sibling relationship, she's not really rewarded with a good relationship with her siblings, even though she kind of stepped in as a pseudo mother for them.
Yeah. Yeah. It does feel, I think you described it earlier as claustrophobic, and it does feel that way. I mean, the house feels dark and cramped, but also from Anna's perspective, it does feel like such a burden of responsibility. She's always worried about what state her mother's going to be in, what her sisters need, whether her father's coming back that night or what time. that, yeah, it must be suffocating for her growing up like that. And I think we don't get a lot of scenes of Anna's mother trying to, triangulate with the sisters or pit them against one another. But there is, a couple of
Yeah.
them.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe she was successful in a way. I didn't there weren't there wasn't a lot in the novel showing like the, I guess, more genuine relationship dynamics between the siblings, except for one or two places. It was, it felt almost always like Anna looking out for them. So, as you
Mm.
said, it didn't feel like she got a lot of benefit of having sisters, which is really sad. She does have a best friend that moves in across the road, and we have this friend in her adulthood as well, who they seem extremely close and probably more like sisters than Anna is with her own sisters, but not in a healthy way, right? I mean, we see that friendship sort of fracture, or Anna sabotages it. So she doesn't have any like really good, fulfilling, reciprocal sister relationship, I guess. And that for me was a big question, moving through the novel was, her sisters weren't the problem. There's no problem between them that would lead to an estrangement. It's all sort of stemming from what happened to all of them in their childhood and the kind of relationships they have with their parents. And I guess because the two younger sisters remain in the same, town or region as her parents and are still in contact with them, then that leaves Anna on the outside. And it seems, by choice, she doesn't want to be in contact with them.
Yeah, I think though, even though there are not, there's a quite a good sibling scene right at the end, as I recall.
Hmm.
But during the book, yeah, you're right. Right, the sibling relationship is not massively explored, other than the triangulation and the fact that she's parentifying them. But it is explored kind of subtly in that you feel the sense, I think, of how sibling relationships are so shaped by the overall family. And I think there's this bit where, you've got her and she keeps getting called and she keeps not answering the phone about her mother. She knows something's wrong with her mother, but she doesn't want to answer the phone. And it's a sense that this good friend of hers and the sibling that's trying to call her, I think it's a sibling trying to call her, are all kind of slightly implicitly judging her for not really caring or wanting. I don't think it's that she doesn't care, but not wanting to go back and deal with her mother.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that actually tells you a lot about the sibling relationship, because I think I've been looking a bit at kind of care work with siblings and how it can affect your relationship, kind of having to care for an elderly parent, which is essentially what happens here, having a parent where you're really pushed to that place where like you left, you escaped your family or whatever, but now you're really going to have to make a hard decision. Are you going to go back and deal with this? And how people you can it feels like she feels very judged for how she responds or doesn't respond to her mother. Um, but the thing is with sibling relationships is you will experience your family completely differently. So, she has, you really get this sense that she has this feeling of like, I do not want to go back to that place, that house, that feeling that I used to have and that I've managed to escape. Where
Hmm.
maybe for her sisters, it's not such a strong feeling. Like I think there's a bit where she goes back and one of the sisters is kind of a bit like, I really wish I could remember it well, but a bit kind of like, well, obviously we know that mum is unwell, and the kind of is much more comfortable with just being like, yeah, yes, we have to help our mother. This is because she is the way she is, kind of thing. But obviously that sister hasn't experienced the decline, the knowledge of what the mother used to be like as much, the having to
Hmm.
care for younger siblings, like all these other steps that mean that although they have the
Yeah,
same mother, not
the
experience the
younger
same mother.
the younger sisters were protected from their parents' wrath by
Mm,
Anna, right?
yeah.
So Anna has a completely different, as you said, a different experience or different memories of that family. But that was the one thing I was getting hung up on, I think, is because there wasn't a problem really between the sisters. There wasn't like a big falling out or betrayal or abuse between them. I had a hard time believing she wouldn't be in touch with them.
Mm,
But like I said, if Anna felt like maybe without saying so, it wasn't discussed, maybe she had to choose. She didn't want to be in contact with her parents. It was too chaotic. So that meant her siblings as well, maybe.
yeah.
And it doesn't seem like we should say that Anna is not in a great place
No.
as far as her mental health goes in the present day of the novel. So, she's not really thinking things through. This
Mm,
wasn't an estrangement that was initiated on purpose. I don't think it doesn't seem like it. It just seems like she had a chance to move away. She did, and she just never went back.
yeah.
And yeah, didn't make any effort to stay in communication either.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's two quite interesting bits about estrangement, which is firstly, I think sometimes a sibling relationship can just be like collateral damage, like a kind of,
Mm,
I just need to be away from this whole structure. And if you have a sibling who still has a pretty good relationship with the parents or is more able to kind of cope with them, they don't find it so overwhelming to keep that relationship, then it can just sometimes I think be easier for people to be like, well, I just need to have a complete ring fence where this family does not impact my life anymore. But I do think we get the sense with Anna that she's, yeah, not really thinking clearly. It's more of an avoidant thing. I wouldn't even
hmm
say it necessarily would be an estrangement as such. It's more like she's just avoiding her family for a period of time. And then eventually she has to return, which I think is quite interesting just generally with estrangement, because I think um, there's different ways in which it can occur, obviously, but like sometimes I think people aren't consciously trying to be estranged. They just need like breathing room from their
hmm
family for a while. And versus when someone is like, I've tried to talk to my parents, I've tried to explain what I need them to do differently. I've tried to talk to them about how they might have hurt me. They've not
hmm
adjusted, changed, it's a thought out long process. I think sometimes there's also just people who are just avoidant and they just don't want to have the difficult conversations. And I think Anna's more in that place, which to be fair to her, you would be if your parents have been quite unwell, really. Like, I mean,
hmm
how you don't get the impression that she could have really sat down with her mother and father and said, it really upsets me when you do this. Could you change, kind of thing.
hmm Yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that Anna herself hasn't really confronted these problems from her life. Like you said, she's avoidant and she just sort of bottled it away. And if she
Mm.
were in touch with her family, then she would need to deal with that. So she doesn't. And I guess what it hints at is the potential for another generation to suffer in the way her mother did and her grandmother did
Mm.
if she isn't willing to deal with these things. And that's not to say that she has to reconcile with her parents, but she has to confront all of these things that come up that are stirred up from these phone calls that come in from her family.
Yeah, 100%. Because yeah, I think there is this sort of chain of not being able to have difficult conversations,
Mm-hmm.
communicate, deal with problems, face anything front on. Obviously you've got grandmother that just ran away. The
Mm-hmm.
mother that it's quite weird, like she really doesn't want to move, but her response to it is to sort of just go into this passive place of like, well, I'm not going to pack, and I'm not going to
Mm-hmm.
make this life good. I'm not going to engage with it. I'm not going to try and get something out of this move. Nor does she just be like, I am not moving. This is, to be fair to her, maybe at that time with her position, and I think she doesn't seem to have a job and stuff. She might not have really had much option but to follow her husband.
Mm-hmm.
But she certainly doesn't try and make anything out of it. Like she just sort of just shuts down completely. And you do get the sense that Anna is also sort of in her own way, sort of just shut down, like because she has this friendship, and the friendship has some elements that are a bit toxic and unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
And she never, instead of just confronting her friend and talking about any of this, she sort of just passively really hurts her friend.
Yeah.
It's this kind of, she just doesn't confront things. And I think with estrangement, if you are just unwilling or unable, not unwilling, probably more unable to look at the whole event and kind of take accountability for what elements might be to do with you and what elements are not to do with you, and try and see the other person as a full person and see yourself as a full person impacted by things, then yeah, reconciliation is just like impossible. But
Mm-hmm.
even because I don't think reconciliation is always feasible for everyone, um, but even just moving forward with your life. And I think the problem is in that instance, if you are going to be fully estranged from a parent and you're not going to process it, then a sibling relationship is definitely going to be quite negatively affected, because you're going to
Mm-hmm.
have so much stuff that you need to talk about and figure out with your
Yeah.
siblings.
Yeah. Yeah. And I should say, I mean, the novel is quite dark and depressing. There's not a lot of happy moments in it, but I do think it ends on sort of a hopeful
Yeah.
note. It doesn't spell out, how things work out for this family, but it does give you some hope that at least Anna is going to, you know, confront things and not run away from her problems and hopefully recover from her childhood. Did you have that sense?
Yeah, I definitely did. I think it feels like in the final sort of scenes, she comes a lot closer to a place of just accepting that this is what it is,
Mm-hmm.
which I think again is a big part of probably not necessarily healing, but coming to terms with estrangement, or certainly the events that might lead you to want to be estranged, is to get to this place that she seems to get to, of kind of accepting like this is that her mother definitely loves her, so does her father, so do her
Mm-hmm.
siblings. They're just flawed and unable to maybe give her the love, or certainly were unable to give her the love that she needed. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't mean they don't love her, or that probably some of their responses to family life were quite valid for what they were experiencing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if someone was listening to this and they were thinking, am I going to read this book or not? I actually think it's a really good book from the point of view of getting a reader to see both sides. Um, because I do think, certainly with estrangement, and I think we have to recognize that people who are interested in estrangement content are not necessarily estranged as well. They might just have like a difficult family life.
Mm-hmm.
But recognizing that there isn't really any value to kind of totally fixating on your side of the experience, that it's so important to try and see your family members as whole people. Doesn't mean that you have to forgive them or any of these kind of big lofty goals that people say that you should try and aim for, but more just like realizing that people probably haven't hurt you intentionally.
Yeah.
And understanding that is a really good way towards kind of feeling more at peace with what's happened.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you can take out the idea that someone intentionally hurt you who was meant to look after you and love you, then I think that does lessen the pain a lot.
Mm,
Like you said, even if it means you don't reconcile, I mean, maybe that person, yeah, because they didn't hurt you intentionally, they have their own issues. And if they're not dealing with them, then maybe a relationship isn't going to be possible in the future. But at least you know that it wasn't personal. And I think
yeah.
that does, I mean, for me, that helps a lot. That so I know, okay, nobody set out to treat me badly, which
Mm,
yeah, it does feel a lot better than thinking, oh, someone who was supposed to love me just really disliked me. And, that's very painful, especially to think as a child. So I think if we can learn
yeah.
in adulthood that that wasn't how it was, then that goes a
Yeah.
long way.
And vice versa as well, because I can certainly see with estranged parents, they can sometimes be really uncomfortable with kind of seeing the child's point of view. But no one gains from kind of fixating on like what an ungrateful, selfish child, or, someone's made them feel this way, or all these different
Mm,
views, which I totally understand having. But ultimately, it is more likely that you didn't intend to, but something about how the relationship is unfolded with your child just hasn't worked well for them.
mm,
But that doesn't mean you weren't trying, and it doesn't mean that they don't love you, if you see what I mean. You can love your
yeah,
parent a lot, but find them quite hard to be around.
yeah, yeah. I think, like with any conflict, if you want to resolve it, you have to consider the other side, even if you vehemently disagree. That's the
Mm.
only way forward is to try to understand where the other person's coming from.
Yeah. And certainly with siblings, because obviously you're focused on siblings, I think it's so important to recognize that your sibling has also just tried to survive the same family you were in and coped in their own different ways.
Hmm.
Therefore, times where they might have been cruel to you might not really have been anything personal to you. It was vying for parental affection, dealing
Right.
with the conflict of personality. I mean, you don't choose your siblings. Sometimes you're just completely different to them and just
Mm.
thrust together in a house. Kind of recognizing that is intention is maybe not there, and how they hurt you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. That was great. If you enjoyed this episode, join us live on Substack when we discuss Daddy Issues by Katherine Angel on April 28th. Bad Mothers is written, produced, and edited by me, Monica Cardenas. I'd love it if you'd rate and review the show and get in touch with any feedback. You can find me on my Substack, and guess what? It's called Bad Mothers, too.